Hey guys, we'll continue on here with our study of our macronutrients. So we've gone over carbohydrates and protein to this point, and this next one will be about fat. So really just kind of understanding the two different types, what they might look like, some examples, what the primary purpose of fat is, and that way you can kind of apply that when it comes to potentially making out your own nutrition program or at least taking a look at food labels and things like that. So go ahead and downside this. So fat's primary purpose is energy, but it's mainly energy reserve. So our body will take any excess of the three main macronutrients that we have, carbohydrates, protein, or fat. If we're consuming too much of it, it will store it as fat in our body. As a country in general, we are very large people, and we have excess energy that needs to be used, to be honest, more than we really need to. We mentioned before in protein how the body has the ability to adapt when the body's muscles are being broken down, that it's going to rebuild that cell. It's going to help the muscle grow. In the same way, if we're consuming a lot of food where the body's going into a situation where it's like, oh, I need to hold on to this. There's a reason that we're consuming these extra calories. And so that's where a lot of obesity comes in and things like that, especially when we're not using that energy. It is used as the secondary energy source. Fat can be burned at a high level or a great efficiency at a lower intensity exercise. So there is a certain range in which there is going to be a higher percentage of fat that's going to be burned, specifically from a exercise standpoint that we will talk about in our fitness unit, which is coming up after our nutrition unit here in a few weeks. But that is just an example of what the purpose of fat is. You'll notice that it's 20 to 35% of our diet. So interestingly, it's actually still higher than protein. So the three main macronutrients, protein is least. So again, that goes back to how much culturally we over consume protein in general. So something new here, though, 1 gram of fat is equal to 9 calories. So if you remember back in the carbohydrate unit, you can go back to the slideshow. It's about probably 15 slides back. You can take a look at it. We mentioned that a cup of broccoli was 27 calories and a slice of cake was 350. So you can start to see where that might happen. It's over 2 times the amount of calories for the same gram amount that is fat. So fat calories can rack up pretty quick when you're looking at grams. So when you turn over the back of a food label and it says it has 9 grams of fat, but it's only got 20, and it says it's got 25 grams of carbohydrates, well, those calories are actually going to be quite similar when you total them up in terms of even though the grams are higher. And again, there's an average, so it really depends on the person, excuse me. Approximately 50 grams of fat a day should be the limit on that. And then we'll get into the two different types here, so which are saturated and unsaturated. And our purpose of fat, there's a reason that we consume it. One, it tastes good, and it adds a lot of texture and flavor to things. If you've ever had a steak that's got fat on it, or chicken, it's on the bone where it's closer to things that have fat. It does add a lot of flavor. It smells good. There's a lot of people that use bacon grease to make things, so we generally like it, but there are some risks from it, and we'll talk about those as well. But specifically, saturated fat is kind of the bad fat that we talk about. Those are things that are solid at room temperature. It can be found in animal meat. Some is worse than others, depending on the percentage level. Like, for example, I think you can buy ground beef at 96% lean or 80%. It's kind of the more common. 80% is going to taste better than 96 just because it's got more fat in it. So that is something to kind of continually pay attention to and monitor in your own diet. Too much saturated fat can elevate your blood cholesterol levels and increase risk of heart disease. So cholesterol specifically actually comes from animals, and so we'll get into that here in a little bit after we go through unsaturated fat. But that is saturated fat, solid at room temperature, and it's typically viewed as being the bad fat. Oh, we'll go over it here now. So two types of cholesterol. So if you're thinking of at the top, like we have the visual, we have fat up here, and then on this side we have the saturated fat, which are items that are solid at room temperature, and then below this is where you might put cholesterol. So HDL, so high density lipoprotein, and you will not need to remember that, but that's just what HDL stands for. That is the good cholesterol, meaning that we want this number to be high. And then we have the LDL, which is low density lipoprotein, and that is bad cholesterol, and we want that number to be low. What's interesting, though, is that the good protein, the number is always generally going to be slightly lower, or it's going to be lower than the LDL. So it's kind of backwards from what you would think it would be. And we'll kind of give you some examples here in the next few slides. So cholesterol is important, but at the same time can be really can be a thing where if that number gets too high, it can be very detrimental and potentially life-threatening for you. So here's the LDL, just kind of some examples again, mention what it is, what it does, and then here's HDL and other examples of what it does. That's the good cholesterol. So the good cholesterol, HDL, we want it to be more than 40, greater than 40. And the LDL, we want it to be less than 100, and then our total to be less than 200. When you go to the doctor, when you're 25, 30 years old, this will become a little bit more important to you. I'm not sure I ever really cared or even knew what my cholesterol was in my teenage years. It's generally speaking, you haven't had enough access to food at your time to really probably have this start to negatively affect. In addition, your activity level is significantly higher than that of your parents or grandparents, and so you're able to kind of really help maintain a lot of that. Cholesterol has a lot of relation to inactivity and poor exercise, so typically people that have cholesterol issues are people that are inactive and commonly have a poor diet. So kind of similar to heart disease and obesity that we've already talked about. Okay, just some examples here. If we have somebody, we have this test here on the left-hand side of your screen, so I'll use my cursor here. So if they have the HDL test and the result is 20, remember we wanted that greater than 40, so we would identify that's too low. Well, that's not good. And their LDL is 170, so that's more than 100, which we don't want that. So that's too high. Now the total here, it says that it's less than 200, but obviously with those two things, that's not in a good place. So just because the total here is less than 200 doesn't mean that all of a sudden, okay, that's okay. So that's just something to kind of pay attention to when you're looking at these numbers on a test. Here's another example. So this one we got, the 55 is great, 170, that's still way too high and the total is over. So this person's not in a good situation either. Now here's an example of a great one. The 55 is over, the 88 is below 100 on the LDL, and the total is 143. So this person's in really good physical condition, probably doing a really good job on both his exercise or her exercise and their diet intake. So I'll mention this again. You can take a look at some of these slides if you want to kind of go back and pause. Okay, so that's saturated fat. So we've covered what can really be kind of a negative thing is on the bad side, but on the good side, the unsaturated fat is liquid at room temperature. So these are typically oils. So they have some examples there, different types of oils. There's probably some I didn't list. One exception to the rule is an avocado. So that is a solid at room temperature, but is a really excellent source of unsaturated fat. We typically, most people are like, what do you do with avocados? Well, it's guacamole. So if you've ever had guacamole before, that's from an avocado. All right, so we will go ahead and end our fat lesson here. There are a couple extra slides, but it's from an old assignment, so feel free if you want to go through and take a look at the notes here that I have on the PowerPoint. You can take a look at Google Classroom. Again, there's some articles on there that are going to be good for you. The next one will be vitamins and minerals. and water, and that should finish up our macronutrients in terms of review.